Hello and welcome. This is our final podcast for the year. This is our Christmas podcast, and I'm being very composed as we've brought Coda in today. He is our CCO, Chief Cuddle Officer, and I'm told that he breathes too loud. So we've got this special microphone here to compensate for his loud breathing. He's a Labrador, and he pants like that a lot because he's excited all the time. So let's see how we go, shall we? Balance of power, the equality of person, the status, is something in our society that we judge worth by. Basically, it equates to how much tax we pay or don't pay. For people with a disability who are locked out of employment, their contributions to society are not monetised, and therefore their place at the stakeholder table is somewhat limited. The intention of the NDIS was that it placed the participant in a position of power as a consumer. That it put them in a position of power, it hasn't worked that way. What is, however, at the pinnacle of the balance of power is the disabled person's welfare and moral liability, or their lives basically, often being held to ransom to the government. This happens in aged care as well as disability. The same models of care are used as in the previous system prior to the productivity report, with the expectation that an NDIS sticker will change the outcomes. Instead, larger providers hold all of the cards, and the support workers and the participants are left with very little power. For many whose taxpayer status is lower, their ability to negotiate for more affordable housing, for example, is minimal. Only when the cost of not housing that moral liability do we consider them. Beyond that, maintaining growth and profit is aggressively protected. Capitalising or privatising healthcare from a government model, which is a behemoth and many costs hidden, is a wee bit more complicated than just transposing services and rebranding what was an ineffective system anyway. There is much talk about a universal income because of its ability to acknowledge Maslow's hierarchy of needs and the potential change it could give to humanity. When people struggle for existence, it places people in situations where to live or die, they must make decisions that don't benefit the ethics of humanity. It is considered if we evened the playing field, we would change the outcomes for all of humanity. The myth of scarcity even affects the rich because there is never enough, especially in a Machiavellian world. The survival of the fittest religion has been enshrined in our policies and in our beliefs. Worth is established in society by what is perceived to be contributed or taken, and it's all monetary. The issue that I have with that is the financial system is only a construct and does not represent a person's worth or contribution to society. Plus, contribution that we all in fact value is often actually based in deeds, in love, and in the importance of relationships. Those ideals are what we value our most loved by. In our society, the lack of value of community and the value of society is such that we have undermined it in favour of the individual. The perpetuation and survival of the individual. Thus, governments have created a massive rod for their own backs. They then are expected, in such an individual-based society, to provide all care and entitlement as a right. Just as people look to God to solve all of their problems, too often we look to our governments. Sadly, we forget we are the government. Government has never been bigger in our lives and is doing less and less for its footprint because it can't afford to. We have forgotten that government is also just a community-based organisation represented by people from our own communities. It is not separate to us, it is representative of us. Selfishness is the perceived outcome of such behaviours of individualistic serving behaviour. The astonishment that the Japanese fans at the Football World Cup would show respect by cleaning up after themselves and others is kind of indicative of that. What is this and why? What benefit is there? What are they really doing? Surely there is an agenda. Showing gratitude and respect and accepting social responsibility are alien concepts to us almost. When people do go that extra mile for no remuneration, it is often thus met with suspicion. We assume that kindness costs us. And though we expect others to be kind, we often miss opportunities to place kindness in this world ourselves. When others do and rescue a stranger, many wonder there must have been something in it for them. Can it not just be the kinder world we would all benefit from? Is that not something of benefit to everyone? Throughout the world today, we see the same newspaper articles, almost verbatim. Ambulances ramping, healthcare collapsing, casualised workforce, cost of living crisis, and demands on government as an entitlement to be responsible for all of it. Our family units are less strong and less capable, and the cost per person is higher than it ever was. We have many working families who are homeless now and spending Christmas in a tent. We build houses, not homes, and suburbs, not communities. We overlook our very heritage of the family unit that has travelled with us since the very beginning. This is very much reflected in NDIS plans. Lack of social capital, lack of family is costing the government. If we eradicated money tomorrow, we would still have currency, be it gold or knowledge or skills. We would trade in something. What underpins that currency is something that is poorly understood. But it is time. Time has been and always was the currency we trade in. Money is just a construct we use to represent that time. A manipulated construct, of course, but that was its role. Time is the value. And from time, we can gain insight into other types of time currency, such as love and service and family and community. We have become shallow in our fears for our own survival, and we cannot afford to be. In fact, I will go as far to say that our survival depends on our not being selfish, on family and community and selflessness. We are entering into the fifth industrial revolution, the artificial intelligence, green technology and wellness revolution. It is also the time of automation in machines for healthcare and in many other roles, and most importantly, the age of wellness and purpose. In our roles in this next age, we seek worth in our time and purpose to our lives. The time for shift work, precarious, non-valued, exploited work that has become commonplace, doesn't pay the bills and doesn't feed the soul. People have had enough. Each industrial age before afforded us greater comfort and changed the way we spent our time. Today, we spend most of our time in efforts to survive to the next pay. That unit of measure, when we look at its value and then again access the worth of a person, illuminates the real worth of a person. Time spent with them, talking and bonding, contributions with emotional knowledge or other knowledge, the worth of a human being is not a remittance. Time as a unit of measure, when we look back through history to prehistory, is what brought us together and enabled our very survival. The knowledge, the skills and experience bought with time, the time spent together as family, bonded by love and trust. These units of measure assisted us to cooperate and communicate and grow. The more time given freely as kindness, the stronger the investment and the bond in the group. We trade more in memories and banked moments in time and keep them more revered in our minds than we do our bank balances. We have forgotten that, or perhaps we have failed to articulate it. Perhaps we had it removed from us without realising what we were losing. People with disability in this country are great human rights advocates. They have changed human rights legislation and are always ready to remind us when we forget. Their contributions in such ways and in our families are inquantifiable as human beings, and those that we choose to love. The NDIS was brought about due to a productivity report, but it has not escaped me that it was also a little bit of virtue signalling, sleight of hand, in the wrong hands, whilst the reality remained unchanged. Those that were the protagonists of the previous system, the fraudsters and unscrupulous providers, were not remedied by attaching an NDIS badge. A pig with lipstick is still a pig after all. The reality of who had been left out, the degree of neglect, and the need for services was never quantified and is conveniently never pitched against what it had been. The human rights abuses and block funding system against interlocked behemoth government institutions and uncounted, poorly managed resources and agencies. What we didn't understand is why this system wasn't working. We only knew the what. It wasn't understood that in a modern society, our heritage in community and in family had been lost. We didn't understand the limits of a capitalist financial system to provide the non-remunerated compassion we were lacking. We didn't know why, and we certainly thus had no idea how to fix it. Capitalist and privatised healthcare means lowest bidder. In disability, it means invest as little as possible with an acceptable an income as is possible without killing the golden goose, which is the participant. Where difficulties have lay in providing cost-effective support and choices and control, guardianship has prevailed. And as such, it has increased by some 71% since the NDIS. Choice and control must be convenient and equitable, apparently. The reality of lack of competence and skills is rarely questioned, and participants are labelled difficult faster than you can type an invoice. No one looks at the business models and says, well, that won't work, do it differently. No, it's altered the participants' parameters to fit a failing model. Feed the machine more money. If you are high needs and can't live in a group home, it's likely you are a target for guardianship. For the elderly, as soon as your care needs go over level 4, around 58,000, you are likely to find yourself under guardianship if you don't comply to cost savings in the guise of being shoved in a nursing home. God forbid we have NDIS-sized packages for the elderly. We don't work towards early retirement so their own family can provide this care for them. There were so many other ways of doing it, but we march to the drum of failure. If you are too difficult to look after and they need the bed in hospital, you will find yourself stuffed away in so-called rehab, an institution, a place of forgetting. No one thinks, where are the family? Where is the community? How can we support them? You can really understand this when you consider now we are looking at 3-year-olds in school. What's wrong with that? Well, maybe families want the right to be a family and be able to care for their own children. Assisting in getting them to school earlier isn't helping working people to work and be a family. The solution shouldn't be we take care of your family, keep working to the beat, the ever-marching inflation. Nor should it be for aged care or disability. Families and carers should be supported to care for their loved ones, not exploited. Just as we need to stop exploiting support staff, they need secure employment, training and respect to know when they are working that week, so they aren't falling asleep driving home, unable to afford the fuel to get to work, and miserable, and with COVID, attending to the vulnerable. It would have been better for aged care to provide financial instruments that enabled the funds through investment in personal care and private care in the home. Hard when houses aren't accessible anyway, eh? Very hard when providers have the government so transparently by the balls with one hand and the elderly with the other. Authority and control, a powerful manipulator and remover of choice. How much more quickly would aged care have adapted if private clients were paying from their own pockets for care in the home? Would we allow anyone, regardless of qualification, to attend our parents? Don't think so. Now that would have been choice and control. Just as in disability care, the fear of workforce failure and the ransom of moral liability drives government's decisions and not best practice. We are constantly chasing our tail and crisis managing. But capitalism, which can be the great evolver, wasn't allowed to do its job. It was manipulated, and aged care institutions whinged loudly like bleating goats for more and more cash, whilst enjoying being fund managers, unregulated, not accountable, whilst aged care was just a side hustle in reality. Hard to believe, with the $30 billion government guaranteed RAD fund, we discuss $10 meals. Easy to understand why government is so malleable when it guarantees such a large amount of money, why it can't fail. The same applies in disability care. The participants and the staff are voiceless. Voiceless lambs with the moral liability of any care being driven by the more powerful, whilst innovation and change lay beyond reach. With the costs ever mounting of providing care in community settings and struggling to layer an institutional level of resources into a normal home, we are at risk. How do we transfer the panopticon and its infrastructure of the institutions to an individual's home without making it an institution? Should aged care wobble further, the aged care machine will seek easy cash. And we already see large providers queuing up for NDIS registration to fill their poorly managed holes in their finances with the disability dollar. The hospitals get clogged up with people too difficult or too complex to care for in the community. The effects of a failing workforce and a poorly trained and exploited one ripple more like a tsunami across both sectors. The SRFs, the specialist residential facilities, maintain their lowest profile, for God forbid they be seen for what they are, institutions. Our governments slide our people out of hospital into transition facilities until they are full and then seek new hidden beds to use in favour of publicly alleviating bedlock for the voters. Can't have disabled people clogging up the system, taking up beds. Yet we don't often hear about, or God forbid we solve, the reasons why we are fishing them out of the river in the first place. Let's just pull them out downriver and do it quietly. Let's never speak of the problems. Gosh, it would require another royal commission, another parliamentary committee or task force to state the bleeding obvious. It serves and lines the pockets of too many of their friends, after all. Even with a new government in place, it may take a decade to clean out that basement of nepotism and backsheesh. There are serious issues that need fixing, and in the absence of a plan, and in the absence of knowing why this is the case, we are forced to digest the any old how. Too many are making decisions based on assumptions and quick fixing, implicating the more powerful. Too many with even the best of intentions, who can't see the wood for the trees and identify the problems and are left crisis managing in favour of fixing. I don't wish to see institutionalisation reinstated because it's all failed before us. I don't wish to see secret institutions and the dream and vision of the NDIS proper forever dreamed as well, just too expensive. We all possess the will, just some of the will is to fill their pockets and not see it succeed its vision. Well, I say to you, sod that for a game of soldiers. We are a community and we have the power together. There are actuaries who can literally assess the cost of every breath to a participant. We can cost everything down to that micro level. We can't live in such a profit and loss world of costing each breath by contribution or deficit in that simplistic way. We either encourage people to breathe less often or not at all. One can be forgiven for contemplating if that is a part of the plan. The solution is as simple as it was from prehistory to today, because it is the same solution anthropologist Margaret Mead believed. Mead said that the first evidence of civilization was a 15,000 years old fractured femur found in an archaeological site. A femur is the longest bone in the body, linking the hip to the knee. In societies without the benefits of modern medicine, it takes about 6 weeks of rest for a fractured femur to heal. What Mead is referring to is that as a group, we supported each other and cared for one another. So if we lose that ability and that civility, we lose our rights to be called civilised, do we not? We speak of heritage when we refer to buildings and paintings and culture, but we forget that across all of humanity, wherever and whoever we are, family and community are an intrinsic part of our heritage. That heritage that enabled us to become civilised and develop and survive. We build houses and we fail to maintain the integrity of the communities that came before. We don't build neighbourhoods. We build suburbs. And the cost of that we can directly calculate, just as we can for every breath in and across our entire society. The lack of a soul present to open a door or answer a phone, the simplest of things, we can easily place a cost on in an NDIS plan. Are we not more than a moral liability? Moving forward into this next industrial age before us and in solving many of the issues old models of capitalism, we are unable to solve. We need to do things differently. But we do not need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to look within our own lives, our own homes, and our own dinner tables. We just need to look there to see the value in our families, our communities, and our neighbourhoods, to remember our heritage, the heritage of community, of family, and place it at the core of all we do. Not only will we see the value of every human being in a different light by regarding and acknowledging the common unit of measure as time, but we will have the solutions we seek to solve the economic and financial equation on how to provide care for everyone in our community without removing their value as a person and their quality of life. The cost of not doing so is far more than our status as civilised. Our humanity is our most precious commodity. As financial markets struggle with the elastic of monetary currency and how far they can manipulate its bandwidth, everyone's quality of life disintegrates. As money is worth less and less, so are our lives. The only unit of measure that is still backed by any tangible commodity is time. And it is backed by the time and lives of real people, just as it was intended when money was created, a unit of measure representing our labour in time. Less money, less quality of life for the people, as each breath is measured. In a community that works together and supports each other, it is reasonable to say we can easily solve the problems the disability and social care sphere faces together without compromising on quality of life. In fact, quality of life is the outcome we seek when we value our own time and the lives of others and the time we spend with them. When we measure the value of people differently, it changes how we see them and also how we see ourselves. The stay-at-home parent who never worked, but to replace them would be a cost we cannot calculate with dollars. The love, the compassion, and the dedication cannot be equated in dollars, but it can be understood when we remember the time they gave, the time they lived with us. This Christmas, remember the true value of people, of those who make up our communities, our staff, our participants, our family, and our greater community. The benefits of random acts of kindness to ourselves, as with each act we make the world a better place for ourselves as we do for others. Stick together in our community and make the circle large and inclusive for whom we embrace in our community, a place where we are all valued, all loved, and where we are stronger together always. We are never alone, we have each other. May we always value life by the quality of the life lived and never by any other measure. Merry Christmas.